Okay, let's get started. Lester Keizer, thank you very much for joining me today, and welcome to the channel.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I really appreciate the invite. I had no idea what I was getting into when you sent an invite out of the blue, but after researching, I feel like you've got something to share to the world, and I appreciate you taking the time too and talking to me.
Fantastic. Can we start by revisiting the initial stages of your life? Would you be able to paint a vivid portrait of your journey through time and provide a little bit of background of yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely glad to do it. When people ask me that question, I usually say, well, how much time do you have? Uh, I've been blessed to live a very unusual, unique life. And those are the cards that were handed to me. And I take it with gratitude and gratefulness. Um, I've lived all over the world, and I grew up in the jungles of Borneo, New Guinea, Indonesia, the Philippines, and in Suriname, South America. I was actually born in Indonesia. My dad's Dutch, Indo, and my mom's Filipino, Chinese, Spanish. And they were educators and missionaries. And my first recollection of life was when we were living in Papua New Guinea. My dad actually started the first school in the jungles of New Guinea after World War II in an abandoned General MacArthur airstrip. And literally, my first playmates growing up that I can remember were sons and daughters of cannibals, not even one generation removed. My dad's uh, students were not in kindergarten, he had 18 or 20-year-old kids because they wanted to learn English and they wanted to come learn how to read and write. My dad had a passion for giving to others, and I'm stating that because it sets the stage for my life. Uh, he was a very kind, gentle, patient, no worry person, for he survived three horrible, horrific years in the prisoner of war camp, concentration camp in Indonesia during World War II, where he was tortured and faced death many times and came out of it alive. And that set the stage for my life in the jungles of New Guinea growing up. I remember some of my first events were the anthropologists that would come to the jungles to study the culture. This little lady came up, I guess she's not little, but a lady came up, and later in life I learned she was Margaret Mead, the great anthropologist that would come and study the cultures. And so the whole cultural diversity of the world has made a big impact in my life in that regard. It was an interesting time in Papua New Guinea. I can remember us fleeing the country on a Friday because the communist forces were overtaking the country. Sukarno from Indonesia had come over, President Sukarno. We left on a Friday, and on Sunday, the country had changed from being a Dutch Netherlands protectorate to becoming Indonesian. Lost our house and everything that my dad had from that. It was a terrifying kind of time for me as a little lad, but I also learned about the, uh, the ways of the world from a political standpoint, that nothing's secure. And yet, my dad always had a calmness about him from his experiences in World War II that set the stage for me probably not having to worry that much or be in stress like he would show to me. So those were interesting times in my life. I can remember growing up, we had nothing. Being educators and missionaries, they don't do it for money. They do it for helping others. My mom and dad, and we would have a boat come every month to the harbor. It was called Hollandia, the capital city of Papua, and if the boat would miss coming during the month because of storms or whatever from Australia with all the goods and produce, we would have to live off the land. I can remember many a time going up the mountains collecting ferns and other jungle stuff to survive. And that taught me a big lesson of having to be adaptable in that regard. So those were some of the early experiences I had. Then we moved from literally cannibalism country to headhunter country. We went to Borneo. At this time, it's called East Malaysia, and it was a British protectorate at that time. And my dad again continued helping, um, developing schools and teaching. Um, Teaching the kids and the young adults how to read and write along with my mom. And they were a very big impact in my life. Just one quick story. About 6 years ago, we got an invitation from Papua New Guinea to come visit because they wanted to name a street after my dad, Keizer Circle. So we went back, my brother and I. It's still a very primitive. I would say it's the last country where you can go up in the hills and you could still see Stone Age people living in what I would consider what you would actually see in National Geographic still today. And it was an amazing time because we would be walking down the streets and we would talk to people and we would say, do you know Leslie Keizer? That's my dad's name. And they would say, yeah, oh, he taught my father, or he taught me how to read and write. People in the government, ministers in the parliament attribute their being able to read and write, their linguistic abilities. My father's kind of like the literary father of Papua New Guinea, and I was so proud. I had no idea that one school he started in the jungles. Now there's 23 of them, and every single day, 5,000 children go to school as a result of my parents' tribute. So it was great when they unveiled the street name, a little legacy there. I wouldn't say a little, a very big legacy to my dad. They named the girls' dormitory Gloria's Dormitory after my mom. And I'll never forget that moment on the impact a person can have on the lives of others. That in spite of, my dad could have been bitter having been tortured in a concentration camp and where he would eat rats and dogs and cats and all that kind of stuff. He could have been very bitter with life, but he came out realizing his goal was to help others. And that one significant core value of his made a big impact in my life, even to this day, in all of the situations that I encounter. So, after being in Borneo for a few years, growing up there, spending my teenage years, I remember going to visit the local villages. We would hike for a whole day, take a boat, and hike again some more, way out in the interior where we would start schools. Again, I remember I still have pictures of having these shrunken heads that the headhunters had. A very unique culture, by the way. And today, again, if you go to East Malaysia, Sarawak, which is the name of the country, Kuching, and all the is the capital city. The progressiveness of that country is incredible, and many, many, many people there attribute to their success in life from very poor, humble missionary educators like mom and dad. They did not have very much, but they had a lot of richness in the wealth that they had spread with others, and that basically um, is the value that I carried through. I left Borneo when I was about 16 and a half years old, and went to London to go to college. A little bit too young, I think, to go to college at 16. At Newbold College near Bracknell, near Reading in London. Another experience trying to figure out how to adapt from a very different lifestyle from being in the jungles of Borneo at 16-year-olds thrust into the milieu of London. And that, again, had a lot of defining moments for me because I had to learn quickly how to live and adapt and survive in that kind of milieu. I spent a year there, and I love to travel. I was a Dutch citizen at that time. I'd never seen the United States. Been all over Asia. Been all over Europe. So I thought it'd be great to come to the United States just to visit. I had no idea I was going to immigrate, and so I left London, flew to New York City, borrowed $250 from my aunt. That's all the money I had. One big black suitcase with all my worldly stuff, and came to the United States. And like they say, the rest is history.
Okay. So tell me how your career started, the journey of your career. What have you been up to throughout your life?
That's a
And
very
how did your early years prepared you for your journey, career
that's a
journey?
very good and very interesting question. Um, I like to say I've had one, two, three, four careers, four different, totally different uh, jobs, if you want to put it that way. It's not really a job, it's actually a passion that I had shared. Each of them absolutely different from the rest. And I want to make that point again for a lot of folks out there who may be younger or figuring out what they want to do with their life and where they're headed. You never end up where you think you're going to go with all the planning you have, even if you start out with, say, a psychology major or a math major, you usually end up doing different things. But the point being that each of these stages in your life, if you take the good along with the bad and the challenges come along, it can help you prepare for whatever there is. I'm a firm believer that as an individual, we can survive based on our experiences and also based on what I call the strengths that we have kept within our soul to keep on going. So, just to start out, um, my mom was a Filipino, the quintessential Filipino Asian lady, very driven. She had only one goal in life. Well, her main goal was that all her four boys would get a college education. I had four brothers, and her main goal was all the four boys would get a college education, and someday immigrate to the United States, as she thought that was the country to go to. A lot of Filipinos think that, and so she prepared me for that. As a little boy, I can remember coming home from school. I had to come home. First thing I had to do was practice typing half an hour a day. This was in the jungles of Borneo. And then after that, I had an hour, 1 hour of piano practice. After that, I had to do all my classwork. After that, the chores. And if there was enough time, we could go out and play. Yeah, some may say that's pretty strict. And yeah, I was very strict. But mom had a goal in mind about discipline and excellence. And that's how she trained us. And she had every single day of her life, I could almost think her say to the kids, you have to finish college. Don't even think of getting married. Don't even think of whatever. You have to finish college. I always joke and I say, I think my mom would have forgiven me if I had murdered somebody on the front lawn of our house, but she probably wouldn't forgive us if we hadn't finished college. So, yeah. So she and dad sacrificed everything so all of us could go to college. I guess another key is education is important, very important. So I ended up getting my master's degree in religious administration, and I'll tell you about how that launched into my other career. My other brothers, she put through university too. They all have graduate degrees. One's a physician. These were from humble, very not wealthy parents. And just one slight deviation in that. At the age of 55, after all of us had gotten our university degrees and our master degrees, Mom said, "It's my turn. I'm gonna go to university." And she, at 55, got not one but two master's degrees from Andrews University in Barron Springs, Michigan. She made sure all of us boys and the grandkids were there as she marched down the aisle because she wanted to show us that after you guys were done, it's my turn. I'll never forget that moment. Um, Discipline, the encouragement, the inspiration that mom had for us to go through life in that regard. So I got a degree in religious administration. My mom always wanted me to be a doctor, the quintessential career for any Filipino mother. I know that's a generalization. No offense to the Filipinos out there, but you know what I'm talking about. Uh, I just couldn't hack it being a doctor. So I ended up actually going to seminary and being a minister. So the first 13 years of my life was spent as a clergyman, a very young one at that. And then I think that that was good and bad in that regard because it taught me some good lessons, but it also I learned some very very hard lessons from that. So I ended up being a minister. Uh, Very interesting times over in um, Virginia and Tennessee. Uh, at the age of 28, I was pastoring a church in Nashville, Tennessee. When I came on board to be the minister there, we had only 72 people coming to church. And when I left, uh, we had gone to almost 900 people coming to worship services every weekend, three services during the day. And I was a senior pastor at age of 28, the youngest one in the parish over there in Tennessee. Very high, heady, big stuff for a young guy at 28. There's a lesson there. I think when one gets power and control into their heads, that's a dangerous thing, especially when you're 28. Uh, for those who have some experience in a religious background, ministers, as you well know, the whole history of them, you can record them. Those who get filled with power and control usually, go down the wrong path. And I learned the hard way that it's not all about power and control and being successful. So when I realized at 28 that wasn't for me, uh, I switched over careers, which was another very interesting thing to do from being a clergy person and going into healthcare and becoming a healthcare executive. I'm just going to pause right there, see if you have any other questions or comments before I go into my second career.
No, no, please go ahead.
Okay. Um, so the point I want to make is what does one do after being a minister? You have a totally different mindset uh, entering into a business world. It's a real paradigm shift, so to speak. But there are certain common essentials of every career, every job, every situation to have that you can carry along. For example, one of the great skills you learn as being a minister is your love for people and your dedication to helping people. You carry that concept into the business world in whatever form or situation, and one can be very successful. Another thing is to, you know, uh, making sure you've got the right goals in mind, that it's not all about money, it's not all about wealth. It's also about being compassionate to those who are who are unfortunate, who are needy, who are disenfranchised. And I learned at an early age that that was an important core value that one has to have. And the biggest thing was having the grit and determination to just keep on going in spite of what to do. I can remember living the ministry. They don't make much money being a clergy person without a job and thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? I had two little kids at that time. And fortunately, one of my friends was a CEO of a hospital. And he said, well, you know what? Come and work for us. I said, I don't know anything about hospitals and medical stuff. He said, you know, you're good with people. You're good with marketing and sales. It's very similar. Come on board. So I joined the hospital, and my first job was to be a marketing sales associate for the rehabilitation unit. The hospital had just opened 24 beds for physical and physical rehab for patients who needed physical therapy, occupational therapy, and my job was to go into all the little towns of Tennessee and Kentucky, meet with orthopedic surgeons and general practitioners, and try to convince them to send their patients who need rehab to this hospital in Tennessee, in Nashville. And so I'd go into the little small towns in the hills of Tennessee and Kentucky and try to convince doctors to send their patients to us. I remember the first visit I went to a doctor's office. I had to sit in that office room for literally a couple hours. Nobody wanted to see me. And I saw all these drug reps coming in, and they would always get to talk to the doctor. Well, back then, and I don't know if it's still today, I think it's changed, but the drug companies were very smart for marketing. They would hire probably some of the most prettiest ladies and that they could find and dress them up and send them with their samples of drugs to the clinics, and they would always get first in line to see the doctors and the staff. Meanwhile, I would be waiting in the back trying to get an appointment. And I figured I'd learn how to beat them at their game. So I did something that again was a defining moment in my life. Our hospital had a really great bakery in the cafeteria. So I told the baker, I said, "Hey, give me the dozen of your great homemade bread." I put it in paper sacks. Put a little card that said, "Bread is the staple of life in many countries. We thank you for your trust in giving and trusting your patients to our hospital." Blah blah blah. I dropped it off at each of these doctors' offices. The next week, when I came back, I was the first in line to see the doctors because they all wanted the bread. They all wanted that little something. Again, it's not a big thing, but it was something of significance to show your appreciation or to get your feet in the door. An interesting lesson I learned that carried on when we would close $1 million deals later in life. So I did that for a while. Then a few years later, I can remember I got promoted. Technology was just coming in. Nobody was using computers at that time, especially laptops. And they had these really big Hewlett Packard compact like laptops, but they were not laptops. They were like suitcases you would carry around. And I learned how to input the sales process into that computer with floppy disks. And I can remember going on the plane one day carrying that big monster of a briefcase, taking it out and trying to work. The guy sitting next to me asked me what I was doing. I told him about it, totally fascinated. He was a senior executive of a fast growing hospital in the country. And he said, "Hey, you want to come work for us?" And I said, "Well, I kind of like what I was doing." I said, "Well, no, hey, he told me the job. It was for international marketing." And I thought, "Hey, that sounds good." So the next thing I knew, I was now working for a larger hospital system. And then it progressed further. And I remember being hard. I remember actually one day, it was on a Friday, we were still in Tennessee, and I was mentioning uh, the fact to myself. I said, I wonder what it'd be like to move out west to California and be a VP for a large hospital system. I say never ask what you don't think's going to come to you, wish for. And Monday I got a call out of the blue. Somebody had seen my work, wanted me to come to work in California and be a vice president for business development. I said okay, And then he gave me what my salary was going to be, and I almost fell off the floor. I mean, it was six figures. At that time, I was only making maybe 42,000 a year, and he said, "Hey, when you come over, we'll give you 120,000." And I about, I'm a simple
That's a
boy from
that's a
Borneo.
nice increase in
Yeah,
salary.
I'm from Borneo. I'm just a jungle boy from Borneo, and I thought, my gosh, what would I do with 120,000? Uh, Accepted the call and moved to California, and started working for this hospital group called Community Psychiatric Centers. At that time, they were the darling of Wall Street. I don't know, 60 quarters in a row, they beat all the projections. We had 50 hospitals around the country, and I was started doing development for them. I knew very little about that particular business. Remember, I was a minister, then I started doing marketing and sales, and now I'm developing programs for them. And this was a psychiatric drug substance abuse hospital corporation. Well, again, my point being, if you work just 10% harder than your competitors, and if you are creative, think of unique things to do that no one else is doing, you can come up with all kinds of opportunities. Long story short, I ended up at that time developing what we called psychiatric residential treatment centers. Now, there were a lot of residential treatment centers. These were for kids who probably it was their last stop before they get put into the jail, but they have mental problems. They had neurobehavioral problems. Very, they have no impulse control. And so uh, at that time, these residential units were in homes or in large campuses, but nobody had mixed in the psychiatric abilities of neuropsychiatry and medication plus therapy to treat these kids. Well, I put the two together and developed 27 psychiatric treatment residential centers around the country. We had one for single um, teenage mothers. We had one specialized that time. There was really no HIV was coming in big time. We had one for HIV kids. We had one even for the Native American kids that we developed. All these various programs all around the country. But I think the highlight was when I got a call one day to go to London. We also had about I don't know, 10 or 13 hospitals in England at that time called the Priori Hospital Group. And we would buy old historic buildings in England, turn them into psychiatric rehabilitation units, fix them all up. And these are for the private insurance paying folks. You guys over there have a form of socialized medicine. And so those who could afford it, would get this and get get good treatment. I would say in surroundings they were more comfortable with because a lot of the hospitals at that time were like sanitariums and the whole mental health issue they were relegated to the background. So we had a celebrity at that time coming to the hospital, and his name was Eric Clapton, and he was in recovery. Um, and he was a heroin addict and had a whole very interesting life of drug abuse. Long story short, 6 months out of the year, he lived in Antigua. He wanted to develop a world class drug and substance abuse hospital. So they asked me to be the point person on that project. So for 2 years, I spent working with Eric Clapton on Antigua, developing a world class hospital that even today, celebrities, I could mention it, but can't really for confidentiality issues, go to this 34-bed, beautiful crossroads of Antigua hospital to get sobered up and to get treated from their drug and substance abuse. Um, a great story that happened there. We were supposed to be looking for land to build this hospital, and Initially, the group wanted to have it in the middle of the island or so, and because they thought, hey, we can't afford beachfront property. So I was tasked to try and find some beachfront property. I can still remember at that time the meeting with the governor of Antigua. If I'm not mistaken, he had a unique name. It was like Cyril Benjamin Carlisle Beethoven or something like that. A very interesting name. And I remember going to his office and um, asking him for blessing and helping us get land on the beach so we could open up this hospital. And he looks at me and is trying to figure out who I am. Then I notice something. Another defining moment in one's interaction with others. Always find some common form of denominator when you are in marketing and sales. I saw a plaque on his wall, and it was his graduation certificate, his college certificate, and it said Andrews University. And I thought, oh my God, that's the university I went to. So I looked over there and I said, Your Honor, it looks like we have something in common. And he said, What? I said, That's our alma mater. Well, of course, that broke the ice. And, make a long story short, he said, I've got 16 acres of beachfront property you guys can have. I said, we'll just give a token, 10,000 US dollars per acre, So we got this whole wonderful property for 160,000 US dollars. And today, if you go to Antigua, you'll see the crossroads of Antigua. It's just a fabulous place to dry up and get recovery. Um, One story of a defining moment in that era was at that particular time we had to figure out how to pay for this. Eric Clapton and our corporate office had to figure out how it would be sustainable. And to make it sustainable, we needed to get it accredited. In the United States, there is a hospital accreditation called Joint Commission. It's called JACO for short. If you want to get private insurance to cover for it, you have to be accredited. And so I was given the task to meet with the head of the accreditation company in Chicago to try and get this little hospital in Antigua accredited. I can remember going to the office. There was a short guy who was the CEO of that accreditation situation at that time. Very cold, very I didn't think he was going to pay any attention to me. I told him what we were doing, and I said, "Sir, we want to accredit this hospital." And he looks at me and he said, I can still remember. Um, he said, "Boy," and I thought, okay, that's interesting. He's calling me boy. I said, "Boy, do you know what it would take for us to get this hospital accredited?" I said, "No." He said, "I'd have to change my whole corporate bylaws and governance and everything else." And I listened to him and I smiled again. I said, "Well, sir, maybe you should do that. Just think, you could have a celebrity associated to all of this. You'd have the first hospital outside the United States to be accredited." And he said, "I don't think so." He didn't even say goodbye, and he went like this and told me to leave his office. So I left and told the CEO the bad news. 6 months later, we got a letter saying, "Congratulations, you guys are accredited." As far as I know, we were one of the first, if not the first, hospital outside of the United States to get accredited with Joint Commission. What's my point? My point is, again, be persistent. If there are any obstacles in the way, just keep on trying. You never know what will happen towards the end. Um, the company got sold to another publicly traded company, and so I realized that I needed to find some other kind of work to do, and did some consulting for a while. Then I thought, I'm getting tired of working for others. Maybe I should own my own company. And I figured out maybe there was something I could do. And one of my friends, I was living in Las Vegas at that time, had a technology company. And he was saying, I'm getting 65. I need somebody to run this company and help me out. Why don't you come and join me? And I said, I don't know anything about technology. I didn't even know what a domain controller was, what a server was, anything of that nature. He says, nah. He said, you've been a minister before. You know how to work with people. You've been in healthcare and publicly traded companies. You know how to work with that. Anybody can run a technology company. And I thought, I don't know. This is all really foreign to me. I knew something about technology, but it was at that time that the dot com companies were getting big traction. So I thought, okay, um, I'll try it. And so I jumped from healthcare into technology. And people always ask me, what should I do with my life? What kind of job should I be in? What kind of career should I be working, towards? And I usually tell them, and I said, whatever you feel passionate about it. If you're not passionate about what you do, you should look for something else. A lot of people think technology is boring and, it's for the geeks. Um, but I learned a very important lesson that, you know, at that time it was a lot of geek speak, and there still is today. So our goal was to make technology understandable. And one of the lessons I learned was that if I could let a prospect, a customer, understand technology and put it in a way like my grandmother could understand technology, they would buy it and they would sign up for our services. And so that's what we did. And in just a few short years, again, incredibly enough, I learned about the technology world. And it's possible. I mean, you've got folks, CEOs of airline companies who are not pilots. You have doctors, OBGYN, who've never had any babies, who never had a baby themselves, but yet they're professionals in their right. Really doesn't matter what kind of background you have. If you have a simple understanding of people's needs, of financial interactions, and you want to work a little bit harder. And again, as I started learning in later years of my life, you want to do good. It's not all about you. It's not all about the money. If you can make your customers your friends and they can visualize you as a real human being with compassion, uh, with the earthiness of having the same struggles, you're going to be successful. I can remember after the second year of being in the technology company before I finally became owner and co-owner with my brother, um, being voted into um, the advisory board of the largest technology trade association um, enterprise in the world called CompTIA. If you want to be a technologist at all, most engineers will go through the certification and get their A+ degree and get certified to be an engineer. CompTIA was actually set up many years ago by all the big wigs in the corporate technology world who laid their swords outside the door. Competitors came together and decided to form an association to benefit their technology progress and issues. And so CompTIA was formed. I can remember one day, just in my second year into being in technology, guy sitting on the left of me was like the second guy in HP. The one on the right of me was like the third guy in Microsoft. Guy from Apple. All these high intelligent, very, very smart technologists. And I'm sitting there, a boy from Borneo, an ex-minister, and they're talking about all this stuff. And I'm thinking, how in the hell did I get here? And I got sobered about it, and then I realized, I'm just listening. I sat there, I listened, I got all the knowledge, and by the end of that year, I was talking like they were. Um, Point being, again, listen. You can learn a lot from those around you. One of the things I learned is to always be around smart people. I'm not the smartest guy in the block at all. I don't consider that, but I listen and I try to put the effort on learning. Again, a trait from my parents of ever learning, every day, learn, 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 and you will get to where you want to be. So, I had a very successful career in Las Vegas with the technology company. Some interesting tidbits over there. Um, I like to tell the story because of all the political stuff going around the world and whatever. One of my clients was Donald Trump, Trump Towers. He was starting up a hotel
Nice.
in Las Vegas, big gold gleaming hotel. I wanted to get that account. I wanted it badly. I figured, how in the world can I get this account? Because there were so many other technology companies wanting to manage and get that account. And I can remember going in and out of the Trump Hotel. They were just putting all the finishing touches and everything else. And as I would walk through the halls, and this place is plush. I remember going in the boardroom. I mean, their board chairs were executive red alligator skinned chairs. I mean, the tables were gold leaf. I mean, it was all about the image, right? All about first impressions. And then I saw a few technologists, engineers walking in and out. Now you need to know Vegas in the summer it gets very hot. It's very hot, and they were dressed in shorts and hats and t-shirts and everything else. And I remember reading somewhere, whether you agree or disagree on the politics of where Donald is, his big thing was on image, right? It's all about first impressions, which is important. First impressions are important. Um, and I can remember walking down the hall one day. I did have one encounter with Donald, and walked down, and he was walking, and I saw him in the hallway, and I said hello and whatever, and he just kind of grunted. He just kind of grunted. He didn't even look at me, and he walked the other way. I thought, yeah, okay. We got the deal, and I was very surprised. How did we get the deal? So I went. I always go back and ask, thank you, for giving us the opportunity to serve you. But how did we do this? How did we accomplish this? And the general manager said, it's very simple. Donald Trump said, yeah, who's that guy that from that technology company? He walked in here with a suit and a tie. All the other guys were wearing t-shirts and shorts. And then I remembered I had made, when we were doing the due diligence, I made all my technicians who would go into Donald Trump's hotel wear a shirt, wear long pants, and even wear a tie. And oh boy, the engineers hated that. And I said, hey, listen, we're going to get this because that's their culture. So let's adapt. And the general manager said, yeah, we were impressed. Even your engineers came in with the ties. Our printer engineers hated me because how can you fix the printers and we're wearing a tie, it'll get caught and whatever. And he was right. But we just adapted to the culture. Again, whether you agree or not, disagree, the point being adaptability in world life situations is really important in your success. And it's just a little thing, a tiny thing, a tie. We got the contract, and I've sold the company since then. And as I think we still have had it after 12, 14 years of maybe even longer of doing that. So that was my technology years in Las Vegas. We we had some really great times. A lot of the casinos we put in their equipment and all that stuff. And then about 2.5 years ago, almost three now, 2019, disaster struck. I hit a point in my life where thought the curtains were coming down. Um, One day, and I was feeling good. I was healthy, except there were times when I would be sitting in my office in Las Vegas in the technology company, uh, and at 9 o'clock I would be dozing off and falling asleep. Uh, and the employees would walk by and said, "Oh, that's just an old guy. Our boss, he's tired already. Let him sleep," and they would just walk on by. And it got to the point where I said, "Something is wrong with me." So I went and started getting some tests, and I had what I think I'm saying this right, hepatic. I don't know. It has to do with a situation with your liver. Um, anyway, I was diagnosed with non-alcoholic fourth stage stenosis cirrhosis of the liver, and there is no fifth stage. Fifth stage is in the ground. Basically, no hope unless you get a liver transplant. And even though I felt good, it was causing me to get, one of the symptoms was you would just get really fatigued and you would just fall asleep. Um, did some more tests, and Nevada really doesn't have, the whole state of Nevada, even today, does not have a transplant center. So I had to go outside to California to get assessed. So while I was being assessed, they said, you know, you're not, we can't really put you on the list for a liver transplant yet. I said, why? I said, your heart is bad. I said, my heart? I said, I've had executive physicals. I've had no pain, no shortness of breath, In fact, I had just cycled, I'd done a road cycle event, my first 100 miles in one day, which is another story. I came in last, but I still did it. Took 8 hours. And I said, I'm physically fit. And the doctor said, no. It was February 12, 2020. And we had come to the hospital, Loma Linda University Medical Center. And the doctor said, you need to get into the hospital. I said, why? We need to do open heart surgery. I said, I didn't bring my clothes or anything. No, you've got a widowmaker and we need to do open heart surgery. And he said, besides that, we have to do it without a pump. I said, what do you mean without a pump? He said, when they cut you open and crack open your ribs and get into your heart, most of the time you are on a heart-lung machine. They'll stop your heart. The lung machine will breathe for you. And when they're done working with your heart, they'll shock your heart, and hopefully it comes back to life, and they stitch you back up. But the doctor said, we're going to do this without a pump. I said, why? I said, well, because we don't want to insult your liver. I said, pardon me. I said, but how do you do that? The heart's beating like fast, and you're out there doing stitching and everything. And these cardiac surgeons, they're very arrogant. And actually, you need an arrogant cardiac surgeon working on you. And the doctor said, do you have a grandmother that knits? I said, yeah, sure. He said, well, even your grandmother can do that. I said, what do you mean? I said, the heart, you've slowed it down to 30 beats a minute. Blood is gushing everywhere, and you're knitting on the heart with all that blood. He said, they can do it. Arrogant guy, but I needed an arrogant, competent surgeon.
Quentin
So I said,
Tarantino style.
yeah. So the surgeon said, I said, when do we go in? He said, today is the 12th, February 14. My wife was with me, and I thought, okay, that's a good omen. Valentine's Day, Heart Day. Let's do it. Let's have a open heart surgery. Way to go! We'll be celebrating in the operating room, not with tequila but anesthesia. Let's do it. So February 14, I can still remember being taken in. No idea what would happen. Um, Fortunately, everything went well. I, I'll show you my scars, but I don't think I've got a train track going down this way. And then I was in the recovery process. About 2 or 3 months in, I got another call from the doctor. Lester, I got bad news and good news. I said, okay, give me the bad news. He said, you have liver cancer. I said, okay. It hadn't sunk into my mind what liver cancer was. And then he said, um, liver cancer is incurable. I said, oh. He said, yeah, as a matter of fact, it doubles in size every 6 months. So I said, okay, I guess I got about 6 months to live. And I said, well, what about my liver transplant? He said, well, that's where the good news comes in. Here in the United States and around the world, they have a scoring situation on where you get put on to the list to get a liver transplant. Based on certain criterion, you get the scores. At that time, my score was about 13. It's called a MELD score. To really start getting on the top of the list, you need at least 31 or 32. I was at 16. It'll be years before I get a new liver. And out of the 37,000 people who need livers every year here in the United States, only 16,000 gets a new liver. The others, well, you know what happens to them. So he said, well, congratulations. You will get put on the top of the list. You'll get up to 33 on your MELD score. I said, why? Because you have that little cancer cell. It puts you on the top of the list. So what was really a curse became a blessing in disguise. 6 months later, I got a new liver. And I have
True
scars going.
blessing and luck.
Huh?
True
Say what?
blessing and luck.
Yeah, but there's more. I had scars going down my chest this way, and then for the liver, they had to cut it open like this way. So literally, I have a scar on my body. It's my badge of courage that looks like a Mercedes logo. Literally a Mercedes logo. Another story. My wife said at the end of our when we was fully covered, we need to get a Mercedes. I said, no, we don't need one. I said, no, you have a logo. I said, okay, so we got it. But anyway, um, so I got that. We got the liver transplant, and I was very blessed to have one. Little guilt feelings at times because somebody had to die for me to get a liver. I still don't know this person's name. Every year I write a letter to the family. All I know is a 55-year-old um, gentleman who died of kidney failure in in Redlands, California. So if he ever his family may listen to this someday, I would love to contact them, thank them profusely for the gift that I got. So I'm now recovering from my liver transplant. Very long, arduous process. I have to take pills for the rest of my life. They're anti-rejection pills to make sure the body doesn't reject your pill. Uh, my trademark, my children and grandchildren call me Opa Pink. I named my liver Rosito. Rosa is pink in Spanish. My wife is Latino, and there's a reason for that. For the pink, every day I wear pink. They tell me, and it's true. I researched it on Google that when they put the new liver within you, it looks like a regular piece of meat, brown and kind of dark. When they attach the last um, artery, the last duct, the bile duct, they stand back and watch. There's about 22 caregivers, medical personnel in the operating room. They stand back and watch for about 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, if the liver starts turning pink, they literally applaud and yell in the operating room because that means the liver, your body did not reject the liver. So since that day, I'm always wearing pink in
Okay.
honor of
I
all
was
my.
about to ask you because I've seen a couple of pictures of you while researching you, and yeah, I
Ah,
was quite
okay.
curious about the color choice.
Oh yeah, but it's also my trademark. Okay, one of the things in business, since this business thing, because you always have to have your own brand. So make your own brand. Every day now, people ask me, I'm given the opportunity to share my story. But there's more. 3 months later, I got hit by COVID long haul. Nobody knew what COVID was. Almost died from that. I had it for 2 years. I lost my taste buds. I lost everything else. I lost 60 pounds. I can remember one day being rushed into the hospital at Loma Linda. Nobody knew what COVID was. There was a long line of ambulances outside. We had to wait like 3 hours outside in the cold before we could get in. And at that time, their protocol for treating COVID was they would stick you on a board and turn you upside down because they thought you would breathe better. I don't know if they still do that, but that was their first issue. I can remember in the emergency room on this board, upside down, thinking, okay, I had a heart surgery, I had liver cancer, I had a liver transplant, and now some virus is going to get me. I survived it after 2 years. And during that time, I had to go back into the hospital 4 or 5 times to get stents put in because the bile duct wasn't working. I had one day my whole right side got paralyzed. I had all these ugly sores on my face. It was a reaction of an autoimmune situation that I have called uh, Ramsay Hunt syndrome, a rare form of shingles. It leaves half of your face paralyzed. So today I have a little bit hard time articulating, and this side is still all damaged, nerve damage. It may or may not come back. A small price to pay for the liver transplant. And so every day is a blessing. If I have one story, I have one goal in life today. And every day, if I meet a complete stranger and I can just share in 2 minutes my life story and say, hey, enjoy today, enjoy your family, hug your wife, hug your children, hug everybody. You never know what's going to happen to you tomorrow. I mean, in an instant, you could be gone. Just live today. That's all you've got. You know, people say, oh, you got borrowed time. Nah, I got gifted time. And when I say hug your family, I seriously mean it. One last story. I have to share this. Um,
Before you start, I have to tell you that I feel blessed and appreciate that you actually give it more than 2 minutes to tell your story and journey. So it's quite a story and very inspirational. Thank you for sharing it.
you're welcome. And you know, we all have stories. You have a story. Your listeners each have a story. Do an elevator pitch story in 2 minutes or so, and complete strangers. It'll change their life because you never know what they're going through today. You know, you never know. Life's tough. Life is hard. Life is a journey, but you know, there's the joy in the journey, as my daughter always says. Um, Let me share you the one story. Oh, you know, I really actually missed my last career. Let me tell that first, then I'll tell you the last story. So we came to La Paz, Mexico. My wife is Latino. I met her in Burbank, California. She was a producer and manager of Latino beauty pageants and managed an international Latino star. When it was time to retire, I sold my company. I realized it was time to retire after all my illnesses. Um, she's from around here, La Paz, which is means peace in Spanish, and it's right on the Sea of Cortez, which Jacques Cousteau said was the aquarium of America. We have right on this side here, just a few miles down, the one of the world's top 10 most beautiful beaches, designated 2 weeks ago. A paradise, absolute paradise here in La Paz, Mexico. But my point being was that when we got to La Paz, I towed my mid-sized yacht. It's not a very big yacht from Las Vegas. Put it in the marina right down below us, and everything in La Paz is very expensive except the yacht business. Then you have gringo prices. They say times five. Like it's expensive to rent these docks, and I'm thinking, you know, if I rent this my yacht just 2 times a month, I'll pay for my dock fees. After 6 months of recovery, I'm sitting in the same place I'm sitting right now. I'm thinking, you know, I can't just sit here, watch the blue waters or watch Netflix for the rest of my life. I got to do something. So I thought, if I rented this little yacht of mine 2 times a month, I can pay for my dock fees. Of course, I know how to do marketing and sales, so I started advertising, putting stuff on the web, and blah blah blah. And in less than a year, I rented that sucker over 80 times. Other owners of yachts, a lot bigger, more expensive than mine, said, "Hey, Lester, can you rent our yachts? Can you start something?" So I did. So from that one yacht, in over a year, I have 37 yachts in my fleet that I'm chartering. July 4, a few days ago, we hit a record. We had 5 cruises go out in one day. I had no idea how to run a yacht charter business. Hey, I was just a boy from Borneo, ex minister, healthcare executive, technology entrepreneur, now running a yacht charter. Shameless plug. If you Google Lover Lips Yacht, you will see that we have the most 5-star reviews, over 80 or 90 now, in all of La Paz. And that's what I'm doing. I'm actually not selling yachts. I'm actually creating a purpose filled cruise. It's affordable. And again, when I go, it's different than a technology business. In a few minutes, one of my customers will come out for a cruise today. They're going to come not with a frown on their face when they come in that yacht. They're going to be smiling. They're going to be excited. And we're going to create an experience for them that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. They come with their children. And that's what we try to do. Lover Lips Yacht. 2 more stories and I'm done. So you wonder why we got, again, it's shameless plug. You wonder why how we got the name Lover Lips Yachts. The Mexican ladies, women, they have this thing with their red lipstick. My mother-in-law, who's right here right now, she's 89 years old. Before she comes out of her room this morning, she will always have red lipsticks on and her ubiquitous pearls around her neck. That's her style. When I met my wife, she was always wearing her red lipstick. 7 years ago, I took her to Montana to visit my grandkids. One was 4 years old. We were sitting on the couch. He's shy. He keeps looking at her, staring at her red lips, looking at her 4 or 5 times. Finally, he blurted out and said, "Your name is Lover Lips." Today, that's her nickname, Lover Lips. When it's time for us to do a business, you're into logos. We said, "Hey, let's do a lip with a yacht inside." So if you see our logo, there's the red lips with a yacht inside. And I walk down the streets with my pink shirt, and the people call me, "Oh, there's Senor Lover Lips." Or they call Lover Lips. And that's our sign. One story, and then I'm done. So I met my wife 7 years ago, and I had told you she was in the entertainment business, red carpet stuff. She was on television shows in LA, very glamour and glitz stuff. She hates blood. She hates hospital, never been in a hospital. After a few years into our marriage, let's see, about 4 or 5 years into our marriage, she gets hit with this guy, me, with death, life issues. She gave all of that up. For over 2 years, she was literally by my side 24/7, taking care of me, my caregiver. I call her my guardian angel, literally. Even today, when I wake up at night, she will jump up. Is it okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Because she wouldn't sleep at night during those times, just not knowing what was going on with me, to try and take care of me. So I owe my life. I owe my life to her. Um, it's one thing to go through this. It's another to have somebody to support you, to have a caregiver like that. And we all need somebody like that in our lives. So that's my story today. I thank you so much. You have any other questions?
Yes, I have one final question for this interview. And before I ask that question, I really wanted to thank you for sharing all these stories. They are packed of really great, interesting bits and bobs in terms of your career and everything else that happened in between. If you could share a piece of wisdom to the younger generation, one piece of advice, what would that be?
That's that's a very very good question, and I've thought of that a lot. I'm gonna put this very simple way from a jungle boy from Borneo. Be good to yourself. Be good to others. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.